all the good stuff about Derek, his being a dedicated father and a man willing to sacrifice for other people and give you the shirt off his back. All that good stuff I modeled after my father. And then all the stuff that Derek does where you're kind of cringing and you're like, that's it's kind of messed up what this guy is doing or what he's going through. That all came from my personal experience.
Tim, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
I have been looking forward to this since I cracked open the book, The Instructor. Thank you for the copy.
Nice.
This is a blast from the past, which we'll get into, but I'll let you pitch it before I talk too much.
Sure. Yeah. So The Instructor, it's my debut novel. Came out 2023. It's Derek Harrington. He's a retired Marine Force Recon warrant officer who is reintegrating into society, getting back onto his feet after 21 years in the Marine Corps, and he's down on his luck. He's divorced from his wife, he's estranged from his son, his father is ailing, the bills are mounting up, and his fledgling wilderness survival school, which is his own business as an entrepreneur, is failing, and he can't meet the necessities of his life. In comes a offer that one of his students presents to him at the end of his class, saying, we have a private group in upstate New York that would like to offer you $20,000 for 1 month of training, provided you remain completely anonymous as to who we are and what we're doing. And Derek thinks better of it at first, but ultimately with all of the challenges that he's facing, he decides to accept the job, at which point he goes upstate, begins training this group in their private camp on land out in the middle of the wilderness, to which he suddenly and slowly begins to unravel what he suspects is the plot of a group of domestic terrorists.
Awesome. Thank you. So,
how's that?
Yeah, that was really good.
It was good?
Yeah. So what sparked the idea for this book?
So the idea was pretty funny. My friend, his name's Rob. Rob was kind of the schematical or blueprint type individual that I based Derek off of in terms of like his statistical background. Rob was Marine Force Recon. Rob is a wilderness survival instructor. And we were working together in a private security firm at the time, and we were just doing some kind of standard water cooler discussions about our veteran tales. You put two veterans in a room together and we just won't stop talking. And he told me that when Bear Grylls and Les Stroud, Survivor Man, and Alone was another big one that was coming. All these Survivor shows were coming out. Not Survivor the game show, like survival out in the wilderness, teaching you how to make fires with sticks and stuff like that. They were all coming out. He told me he was in the running for getting his own show, but essentially the producers of that particular show wanted him to divulge a lot of his top secret background that he had held while he was in the Marine Corps. Wanted him to divulge stories that he wasn't legally or ethically willing to do so. And so they basically passed on him. They said, that was our whole angle. We were going to have you telling a story from your military career and mixing it with the survival skill. And if you're not going to give us the military stuff, then we've got no use for them. And that pissed me off, something fierce, because I think the actual words that they told him was, without that, you're just a boring house dad from Long Island. And that really pissed me off when I heard that, because this dude's anything but boring. So I came up with the idea. I was writing short stories at the time. I was making more of a commitment towards writing full novel. In fact, I had already written one and queried one, and it had failed spectacularly. So I was kind of in the mood for something to pick myself up off the floor from that first go-around. And I said, Rob, I write these stories on the side. I have fun with it. It's more of a hobby, but I'm trying to break into publishing with a full-length book. I was like, how about I write a short story that we could pass off as like you're based on a true story background, right? And it was all in fun and games. There was nothing serious behind it. Rob said, "Yeah, go ahead, have fun. Go write your short story." Never expecting anything of it. It was like he wasn't going to take it and go out to Hollywood with it and be like, "Oh wait, here, no, I've got an actual background for you now." Nothing like that was going to happen. And what started as we hashed out a couple ideas in there, and we wanted to do a few things involving the FBI and what kind of a counter-terrorist plot might look like. But for the most part, I just took his schematical background, kind of where he was deployed, his skills, his wilderness survival, and I imported that as the character into this plot and into this story. And it started like it was going to be kind of a couple of page narrative just to give him that based on a true story background, and then it turned into like a 10-page short story, and then it just took on its own life. I was a man possessed, and I wrote the entire first draft in 90 days. The first draft was 90,000 words. I wrote it in 90 days. Literally sitting with a laptop in bed, my wife at the time asleep next to me, 3 a.m., clacking away. And so that's where it all came from. And like I said, no one could have expected that it would be the first book that would actually get published and be my debut and everything. Yeah. But that's kind of how things happen sometimes.
Yeah. Did he beta read that for you after the first draft?
Yeah, he did. His father did as well. It was after the first draft, so it was very early on in the process. But yeah, he ghostread it. He's credited in the book as well. Every once in a while, I'll touch base with him on a little anecdotal survival skill. That I was like, hey, if we put Derek in this situation, what would be something that you could use? And he'll, try the dogwood tree. It's just little things like that, because I did a ton of research. I always do a ton of research on all my books that I write, but I did a ton of research on the wilderness survival. But if you can actually go to like someone who's a practitioner of it, it's like, people mistake that all the time. They're like, "Oh, you must be a survival expert." Like, no. I'm well read in the subject, but there's a difference between making primitive stone tools with your hands and actually being able to feasibly do that versus just reading about how it's done. So you throw me out there, like I'm going to be starving like the next guy. That's for sure.
Yeah. So how much of the book was from your own military background and experience? There were some scenes that were like I've served in the Canadian Reserves in the infantry. Nice. So when there are moments in this book, and I don't think they're spoilers, but there are moments where he's throwing CS gas into a house and everyone's coming out with snot out their nose and stuff, and I'm just like, oh my god, I remember those moments. They were terrible. So I'm reading this book, and what I loved about it is that whole survival thing, and the beginning was very strong for me because of all that. I was like, man, I know this guy. I feel like I've been there. I know what he's talking about and exactly what everyone's going through.
Sure. I always say that I break Derek down into 3 parts, with the first part being what we just talked about, with all kind of the biographical information that I based him off of from my buddy. I say all the good stuff about Derek, his being a dedicated father and just a man willing to sacrifice for other people and give you the shirt off his back. All that good stuff I modeled after my father. And then all the stuff that Derek does where you're kind of cringing and you're like, it's kind of messed up what this guy is doing or what he's going through, that all came from my personal experience. So some of it is very much, or a lot of it in that guise, when you break it down into those kind of buckets, that nasty stuff comes directly from my experiences, certainly, and the experiences of other individuals that were confident enough to confide in me some of their stories as well. And I never plagiarize those or anything like that, but they'll talk to me about their experiences, and those will kind of shape some of the things that I put the characters into. Because again, it's all just adds to that realism and gives you that feel of being there and going through it. The CS gas scene I actually based off of the opening first few minutes of the Navy SEALs Hell Week, when they'll have these guys just, whatever the Navy SEAL class is, they're just lying around in a classroom waiting for Hell Week to begin. They know it's going to start that day, they just don't know what time. And then usually like the door flies open at 3 a.m. and flashbangs and tear gas are thrown into the room and they're getting screamed at. And they come out and they're getting hit with a fire hose of freezing water and there's machine guns going off and everything. And it's just meant to be so disorienting and throw them into a complete panic and really kick off Hell Week with this crazy introduction, trial by fire, as it were. But you see like little anecdotal things throughout the story that are just kind of your more mundane. Like I wasn't special forces or special operations. I served 5 years on the conventional side of the Army. I was a tank officer, and then halfway through my career I switched over to military intelligence. So there's just like a lot of the run-of-the-mill just kind of nonsense that you put up with in the day-to-day of the military, like the hurry up and waits and just little lingo here and there and how the dining facility is set up, just little stuff like that I think comes through because you can only get it into that level of detail from people who have actually lived it and done it a little bit.
Yeah, I love that about it, which was a lot of fun. Were there scenes where you, after like say the first draft, you had to either back off on the realism because it was almost too shocking for readers, or vice versa, where there was some where like, I think this is going to be worse than what I wrote?
Yeah, it's funny, both my agent and my editor had to tell me a couple of times to tone it down, and I was actually of the impression when I handed it in saying like, tone it down, I haven't even gotten started yet. So that's a peek into how depraved my mind works, I'm like, this is nothing, and they're like, no, you're literally ripping teeth out of people's mouths, like you have to tone that down. And I was like, okay, fine. Yeah, 2 instances really when Derek is doing kind of the seer training introduction to the class in upstate New York, and he starts putting them through the ringer a little bit. Yeah. That was originally very heavy-handed in the first draft, and thankfully this is why I always wanted to go traditional. There was a lot of things wrong with the first draft, but having those eyes of people that work professionally in the industry every day, that's what I really wanted. I wanted that because they know what works and what doesn't, and they can look at a manuscript, and even though it might be very well done the first time, they're going to take it up to the next level. So they said, everything that you're doing in this scene is cool, but it's just, we don't know, that these guys might be the bad guys, you as the author, meaning me, but the reader isn't going to know at this point. So when he's doing these things to these guys, it really makes him look like an asshole. And I went, oh, well, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because we haven't established who's a good guy, bad guy yet, and so it makes Derek look like the bad guy, essentially. Working through that kind of thing. And then there was another instance which involved, I love telling the story, a pack of bloodthirsty dogs that had been basically trained to maul and to kill people. And the bad guys are planning on using them at some point. And I had a scene where a boy in the camp gets attacked by one of these dogs, and Derek is the closest. He jumps in, saves the kid, kills the dog, right? And both, again, my agent, my editor said, you can't kill a dog. I'm like, what do you mean I can't kill a dog? I'm like, this isn't some cutesy wootsy little thing. This is, a bloodthirsty dog that is in the process of mauling, of ravaging like an 11-year-old boy. Like, yeah, I can kill that dog. They go, you can't kill a dog. Can't kill a dog. The whole public will turn against you. And I love dogs, right? Yeah. I'm one of those love dogs more than people kind of thing. So, like, all right, I'll take your word for it. So I take the whole thing out. Wouldn't you know it, like, I don't know, maybe a month or two later, I think. I don't really know. I don't know when the movie came out. But John Wick comes out. And, like, within the first 10 minutes, there's a little beagle puppy, the cutest puppy in the world, getting his head stomped in. Yeah. And I'm like, whoa, what the hell, man? Like, you can't kill a dog, and then you just set off this, 4-movie, 5-movie franchise by killing a dog in the first 10 minutes, So, whatever. It's fine. Yeah.
So you wrote this book in 90 days, which is very impressive. Were there moments where you almost like were going to give up on it? I mean, I guess I would assume not. 90 days is so fast.
I mean, yeah, it was 90 days for the draft. I think it was probably, a full year or so of working through it. I don't know if I ever was in a point when I was drafting and editing where I was like, this isn't going to work. The story was there, right? It wasn't one of those stories that an author writes and then hits a brick wall of 50,000 words or whatever and has to put it away because they just don't know what they're doing with it anymore. I knew that story beginning to end in my head before I even started putting pen to paper or fingers to keyboard. Okay. So I wasn't that part of it. I think the giving up part was when I queried it. And I went out, I told you about the first book I had done that failed spectacularly. It failed as a book, but it was a success in that it taught me so much about the industry process of how to get traditionally submitted and land an agent and all that other stuff. So I had this whole kind of system laid out with how I would locate agencies and then the agents within those agencies, and I would put it all into this kind of massive spreadsheet that I kept, and then would write down certain things that they were looking for or how they wanted their query letter specifically formatted, and then I would tailor those much like a job search where you might do tweaking your resume a little bit to each individual job versus just sending one blanket resume out there, because there is no one size fits all with the query process. And even with all that, even with that systematic approach, well organized, very diligent in doing it, I'd come home from work, eat dinner, kids would go to bed, and I'd sit there and start tailoring query letters, sending out 3, 4 a night, depending on where I was in the research process. Even with doing that, I think I got up to something around 60 or 65 agents that I had either researched or actually sent a letter out to, and I had only gotten 2 responses out of that. And out of the 2 responses, they both requested fulls, which was amazing, but then one of the 2 agents passed on it after reading the full. So I was back to square one, and then it was just my other agent, Barbara Powell, who stayed with it and wrote it, and she actually got on the phone after she read it with me. It was the call. Every writer, aspiring author wants the call when an agent says, hey, let's get on the phone and talk about this. And so we did that, and she didn't sign me right away. She gave me a revise and resubmit, where I had to go back and take her notes and revise the manuscript into more of what her vision was looking like. And it was only after I did that, and again, taking that industry knowledge and putting it into the manuscript to make it better and reworking it, it was only after I was able to do that she actually signed me and did that. So I never quit on it throughout the process, but had Barbara passed, I might have shelved it at that point because I had done an exhaustive querying process, and I didn't really think there was anybody left after that. So it might have been, all right, shelve this one and we'll come back to it another time, hopefully. But yeah, I never gave up on it as an actual story that I was writing. It's more of it was really down to the wire there as to whether or not it was gonna land me representation, which it did. So
yeah.
thankfully it did.
I love that story of resilience. It's so easy to get like 1 or 2 rejections and then just decide it's never going to happen.
Sure.
And you sent so many even before you got the first one back, which is fantastic.
Yeah. I don't recommend this methodology, but coming from the military with a couple of deployments to Iraq under my belt, getting a rejection letter really, in the grand scheme of my perspective, it really didn't bother me that much. It's just, okay, you got to break an omelet to make You need to break some eggs to make an omelet. And that's kind of my approach to the whole thing was, well, at the end of the day, if I get rejected, I'm not going to stop writing stories. I love doing it. I'm just going to keep doing it and keep improving. And hopefully at some point, like, this is my goal. I want to be published. So let's just rock and roll with it. But yeah, don't join the military and go overseas and get blown up a couple times to gain the perspective that a rejection letter isn't the end of the world. Like, just realize that it's not the end of the world, and take my word for it, and go that way.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Getting into character a little bit, Derek's character, when he started off in the book, he's pretty intense, and it's like he's battling with some trauma. You can already tell in the way he responds to people. I thought that was I wouldn't necessarily say risky, but usually when you get introduced to a character, you're looking for reasons to like them. And in some sense, you gave us reasons not to like Derek off the bat. Like, you have to give him a chance with what he's going through to understand what he's going through. How did you how did that all get built and in your mind, and when you developed Derek as a character?
Well, I think it was because it was this book in particular was exceptionally cathartic for me. So a lot of the issues that Derek deals with in terms of reintegration from the military back into civilian life, and his issues of post-traumatic stress disorder, those are a lot of real life, if not the actual emotions and outbursts that happen, down to actually specific instances that I repurposed. Because, again, I want to write what you know, that old cliche, right? I wanted to give the realism of what guys and gals who experience this, what it feels like. And so I used my own experiences to do so. But then when you take it in the course of the story arc, I can't waste time making you like Derek only to then show you how much crap he's going through, right? Like there's only 90,000 or 100,000 words to play with, and so the kind of the outset was, I gotta draw the audience in, draw the reader in with all of his flaws up front. Just you see him just laid out, and see this guy who's really at his wit's end and just needs to catch a break. And it is a risk because, like you said, like, people might be like, this guy Derek's kind of an asshole. I don't want to keep reading past this. But what I tried to do was say, it's not him necessarily that is off-putting. It's the stuff that he's dealing with, the way he's reacting to it. But underneath it all, if you really look at Derek, especially if you go all the way through the end, underneath it all, he's really just a good man who's trying to be a good man. And because of his circumstances, because of the kind of the raw deal that life has given him a little bit, and all the things that he's trying to overcome, both outwardly and inwardly, and all those battles that he's going against, he doesn't react the best in all of those situations. But his overarching character is that he is a man of integrity. He is a man that's trying to do the right thing. He's trying to get back to his son. He's trying to be a good ex-husband, if not reigniting and reuniting with his ex-wife. You know, he wants to do right by his father, even though he and his father don't have a good relationship. You know, so in order to propel the story forward and to have that as the momentum behind his actions, I really had to kind of start you with it right up front. In the first chapter, he's bitching and moaning because he's dealing with civilians that are like, you know, one guy can't get his fire started right, and, you know, a couple guys are on a bachelor party, and a couple other people are like trying to hike the Appalachian Trail, and he's teaching them all wilderness survival. I mean, you know, he's got that very career military mindset of like, I was in charge of whole divisions worth of equipment and millions of dollars and had the ultimate responsibility, and now here I am teaching rubbing sticks together to a bunch of guys on their bachelor party. You know, and it's like, man, look how far I've fallen. And that's a large part of it too, is you know, so you see his loss of self. He doesn't know how to define his own character post-military, which is a huge thing a lot of people go through. But you see those negative reactions because he's in that headspace of like, I can't stand this guy. If this guy was one of my corporals in Marine Corps, I would have bounced his head off the wall already. And people hear that and they're like, oh my God, this guy's an idiot. But it's like, it's it's the truth of it, and I wanted that to come through. I wanted that to shine through with his character.
It did. I appreciated how it started. It caught me a little bit off guard because I'm not used to seeing it, but as I got to know him, and it really wasn't that long as I got to know him, I really appreciated what he was going through, and that you led with that. It was really good.
Great. Thank you.
And when you crafted Marshall, he's an interesting character.
Yeah.
Where did he come from, and how did you craft him from? I don't want to give any spoilers, but he's quite the character as the story develops.
Yeah, I love to cast my characters with Hollywood stars, right? I do. If you go on my Instagram, you can scroll back. It's a while now. It's like 2 years ago now, but I did like a whole post of 4 different iterations of what the cast of the Instructor would look like if it was ever made into a movie or a television series. And I do that just, 1, it's fun. Yeah. 2, it's a good interaction with readers to see who they're thinking of, if anybody, when they're reading the story. But 3, it helps me as I'm writing as a visualization, like seeing these individuals that I've picked out in my mind. Jessica Chastain is playing Sarah and Idris Elba is playing Derek, as one iteration, one example. And the one who always came through for me, not just from a physical standpoint, but also his portrayal of the character, was Stephen Lang as the evil colonel in Avatar. Okay. Who I absolutely love Stephen Lang. You don't realize the range this guy has. He was actually in Tombstone as one of the cowboys in there. I forget the character's name now, but somebody will comment on it at this point. But he was so I just had him in mind, and I was like, if I put a red and black checkered flannel on him and just made him kind of a little bit of an older, broken down guy. And then from there, it just spiraled into, okay, well, what kind of background can we give him? And what kind of story can we have that makes Marshall turn into the person that he ends up being? Mm-hmm. And there was another, I don't want to give spoiler either, but there was a specific topic of a certain brand of leadership, let's put it that way. Okay. A certain brand of leadership that I did a deep dive into. It was fascinating because I always found it a fascinating topic to begin with, but that started to really mold when I started pulling out those characteristics of individuals that seem to occur in all of them and their followers. I'm starting to bleed into the spoiler area,
I got it.
Starting to kind of really assemble those characteristics that all those individuals had in common. And then it was taking the backstory that I had for Marshall and merging those all together. And then all of a sudden you have this guy that is quite diabolical towards the end of it. When you realize what his actual goal is. And I like his actual goal is terrible. But what I really like and hate about Marshall is the bastardization or the corruption, if you will, of what he's using to get these people to that point. Yeah. The way he is toying with these people's lives, toying with what they've gone through, the horrible things they've gone through, and he might seem like a savior to them, but really he's taking all this and secretly bending it to his own will to enact his own terrible plan. I found that to be the most evil of him. Not necessarily his end state, but that he's just looking at any single person at any given time and thinking, how can I leverage this person for my ultimate end state? And he really doesn't give a shit about anybody, despite saying that he does. He's just got that ultimate goal in mind. So that's what I really enjoyed writing with him, was because when you look at that, you're like, oh wow, this guy's evil SOB. What he's trying to do and how he's using people to do it.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I wasn't even sure for the longest time if I was supposed to like him or not, because he's almost likable for a while, and then when the switches start, you start catching on to what's happening, you're like, oh wow, that's messed up. But it all makes sense. Exactly. It wasn't a removal of character. He was on point the whole time. You just didn't know it as the reader until the reveals, I guess you could say, come up, and it was so fun. Oh, a question from Maria Franklin. So we have the thing where we have an author come on, or our last author asks the next author a question.
Oh, that's awesome.
So her question, Maria Franklin, my last guest, asked, how much of your real life ends up in your novel?
Yeah, so we covered that a little earlier with basically a lot of my military experiences. I like to tell people when they're talking about joining the military, I was like, look, 80% of people that join the military have a kind of run-of-the-mill, some good, it's like an average experience. They have some good, some bad. On whole, it's not a terrible experience for them. 10% seem to step in it wherever they go, and it's just amazing. They just get the best assignments, the best commanders, the best equipment. They never have a problem. You know, they're in Sicily, and then they're doing an internship in Great Britain, and then they get stationed in Hawaii, and you're like, all right, guy, whatever. Lucky for you, you know. It just happens. It happens to some people. And then that last 10% are the guys and gals that step in it in the other direction, where everything is a bust. From beginning to end, everything is a bust. And that's how I kind of classified my experience. Five years in, and I was like, this is not what I had in mind at all. And I came out, and then I came out right at the time that the housing bubble burst here, and we had the recession of 2008, 2009. So all the reintegration stuff, it was about 12 months after getting out that happened. So all the reintegration into society. Now I'm laid off. My wife at the time is pregnant with our first child. Now all the PTSD is coming out at the same time. So like all of that was fuel for what it eventually would come into. And so when I was in a place where I could actually access that stuff instead of tamping it all down, but where I could actually use it, it became, you know, fuel for the fire that I would then pour into the story. So very much a lot of my own personal experience ends up in the novel, and even subsequent stories that I've written, I'm always kind of putting some sort of angle of myself into the book, just because I think it gives you that accessibility again, that true to life feeling of, oh, I can relate to this guy, or, oh, I remember that movie. It's funny that the author used that movie line here to describe that because I remember that. You know, just little things like that I think are invaluable and kind of set your own voice as an author.
Do you ever find yourself almost wanting to defend things that happen in the Instructor from, I don't know, like a review or somebody who has no idea?
Oh, it's so funny you said that. My face lit up when you said that. So so Taylor Moore, who's a friend, he's an author. I don't know if you've had him on or not. If you haven't, you need to have him on.
Okay.
He writes this awesome series, the Garrett Cole series, and Taylor is former CIA, right? He's a smart guy, sharp as a whip. He hails from Texas, I believe. Taylor, if I got that wrong, just correct me. I'm pretty sure he was in Texas. So I asked him we connected at Thriller Fest in New York City, and it was in between books 1 and 2. I asked him to read and blurb The Infiltrator, my sequel. And he said, okay, cool, but I got to read The Instructor first. So he starts reading The Instructor, and Taylor calls me about, I don't know, probably the first third of the book. He calls me, he goes, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to blurb your books. And I went, why? What's the matter? He goes, well, you know, you're kind of shitting all over Republicans, which I wasn't. I'm completely like, I try to stay completely independent. I don't like touching politics at all. But I guess he was seeing something that he was reading into it along those lines. And he's like, and your characters, like, I get it. They're all these like backwoods yokels, you know, the good old country boys, and he's like, and then there was a whole angle with some of Marshall's corruption that I spoke to earlier about, and he didn't necessarily care for that either. And I actually talked to Taylor for like an hour on the phone, convincing him, no, you have to get through this to the end, and even if you get through it to the end, you need to read my acknowledgments afterwards, because I explain a couple things in the acknowledgments too of where I was going with this whole story. And I was like, don't take it on face value of the first 2-3 chapters where I'm just, making a political statement or bashing. I'm a city guy because I'm from Long Island. I'm not a city guy. I live in the suburbs. But like, I'm a city guy bashing on the good old boys from the backwoods of Alabama or something like that. Like, no, I'm like, that's not, I promise you that's not the case. And he was very gracious. He's like, all right, man. He's like, you convinced me. I'll finish the books. And he ended up finishing not only the first book, but the second book. Gave me a really great blurb, and I was grateful for that. But yeah, it was like this rush to defense of the novel, because I was like, no, please, you got to read it all the way through, because otherwise you're not going to get the things that I'm doing. You see those a lot. I don't read my reviews anymore. I did when the books first come out, but every once in a while, you put somebody, it'll say you did not finish on it. But I found that those are more and more ludicrous, the reasons behind those. So I just stopped paying attention to them. It's like, I didn't read this book, but my wife saw the F word on page 2, and we don't allow that in our home. So I'm like, okay. Again, it's just absurd things like, never read the book, but didn't like the red letters on the cover. 1 star.
Wow.
Like, how do you, it's just become so crazy with it, so I don't even pay attention to that stuff.
Wow, that's a new one. I haven't heard that before. Don't like the red letter.
Oh, yeah.
1 star.
There's a million of them. Who knows?
What advice would you give someone who just published their first or second book, either traditional or self-published?
Yeah, it's on you. The publishing industry is a grind, right? It is a machine that keeps going no matter what, day in and day out. Every week there's another 5-6 books coming out in every genre. And unless you're it's kind of a weird contradiction, because unless you're a well-established name, like I see on your shelf there in the back, a Tom Clancy, a Baldacci, unless you're one of those huge names that there's a guaranteed sale of millions of copies, you're not going to get big dollars in terms of marketing and publicity and everything like that. You might have a junior publicist assigned to you, if you're traditionally published like I was, who just because of the workload that they have is maybe going to book you one event. So if you think that you're a brand new author and you're going to be sent on a global tour where you're signing and everything, no, you're not. Like, you need to put your own graphics together. You need to be calling the bookshops. You need to be arranging the tours and keep yourself in that marketing and publicity space if you want to. Other people are content with just having the book out and never setting foot outside their apartment or their house because they just want to write, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I wanted the other way of going, but you have to, put your pedal to the metal in terms of that grind early on. Why I say it's a strange contradiction is because, well, how do you become a huge name that sells millions and millions of copies if there's never any like early on support? So you have to kind of cultivate that in your own right in order to get to the point where, okay, now you're a big name. Now we can put some support behind you. So just like anything else in life, I think, you have to do the grind and put in the work. It doesn't stop once you've signed that agent contract. It doesn't stop when you've sold your first book. It doesn't stop when your first book is out. Like, it's just, if you really want it, you gotta put in the work. You gotta keep going.
I appreciate you sharing that, because I think there's a lot of people that don't realize. They think if they get their first book out that the fans are lining up and the big dollars, and it's like
don't
that's
put your
the
job.
1%.
That's the
1%.
That's the other one. You get a nice advance, but then you don't realize it is broken out in 3 separate installments that'll be over 3 years, with a third of it taken away for taxes, at least here in the States or whatever. Taken away for taxes is just, and people are like, oh, look at this, I can quit my job, I can write full time. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't.
So last question, where can listeners find your books and find out more about you?
Sure. So I have my own website. It's trhendricksauthor.com. You can go on there. It's got a bunch about the books and stuff. There's actually, I had an old WordPress website before I launched my professional site for the Instructor, where I would put short stories up, and I took all those short stories and I put them onto my author website. So you can kind of like see the evolution of my writing, because some of them are pretty bad. But I didn't edit them. I just left them the way they were. So you can see like kind of my early on short stories there, up to the point where a couple of them were getting published in literary magazines, and then when the book came out. But then I'm on all these socials for the most part. On Instagram is my most prolific one, where I do most of the posting. That's at Read, R-E-A-D, T-R Hendricks. That is the same address for Threads and the same handle for TikTok. And then I'm on Twitter. I don't call it X. I call it Twitter still. It's capital T, capital R, _ Hendricks. But to be honest with you, I really don't use that one anymore. Like I'm on there. If people tag me or whatever, I'll interact with it. Sometimes I'll retweet something. But for the most part, I'm on Instagram and Threads, and TikTok is where you'll find me for those. And then I was printed under the Tor Forge imprint, so that's under Macmillan. So you can go to Macmillan's website and Macmillan USA and find the books there as well.
Awesome, thank you. I'll link to a bunch of that in the show notes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. This has been a lot of fun. Love learning more about it.
Yeah, it's a blast. It's great. Thanks so much.
Really looking forward to getting into the next book, because I have to know the continuation after the end of this
Sure.
book.
Yeah.
Well done. Well played, sir, with that. The finish of the Instructor to get me to need to know what the hell that is.
Well, if you think that was good, wait till the end of the second one.
No. But then I'm going to start bugging you to continue writing books. When's the next one coming out? I'll become one of those.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, so if you don't mind sticking around for our after show rapid fire, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Don't mind at all. Let's do it.